Oh.
Big thanks to Burnhard for sponsoring this episode.
Today I'm going to show you how you can make the best bark on your pulled pork. Good pulled pork starts with good quality meat. So I got a couple of bust and butts.
Big, fat,
Delicious bust and butts, which are actually shoulders, not butts. They're so beautiful. Look at this. The color of the meat is intense dark. And that means it has a lot of flavor. This is working meat. It's got color, it's got fat in it. It is absolutely gorgeous. These three beautiful bust and butts are part of our test because I want to show you guys the difference between adhesives that have flavor, that don't have flavor, and a neutral one. What makes the best bark on your pulled pork? So what I want to do first is I want to get some seasoning on them. So I'm going to start with making the rub. I'm going to give you my PitmasterX Classic Barbecue Rub, which consists of 1 part table salt, 1 part paprika powder, 1 part onion powder, and half a part garlic powder. Now I'm gonna mix that up, and I got a whole bunch of my favorite homemade barbecue rub. This is a great way to save money on those pre-made rubs. And the recipe is so easy, but still if you want to, you can look it up on pitmasterx.com. On my first bust and butt, I'm gonna put mayonnaise. This is a beautiful Dutch handcrafted mayonnaise, which is absolutely delicious. It's rich and creamy, very, very sturdy. And I'm gonna put a thin layer of it on my bust and butt. About 2 tablespoons of that mayonnaise will be more than enough to coat the whole surface. And because mayonnaise is mostly made out of oil, we're basically coating the outside of this bust and butt with very flavorful oil. I'm gonna start with the fat cap pointing towards me. I'm gonna season that first with the PitmasterX Classic Barbecue Rub. The goal here is to get as much seasoning on as humanly possible, and that seasoning is gonna help by creating a beautiful bark. Now flip it around and do the same for the other side. I got some beautiful Dutch mustard that I'm putting on this bust and butt. It's rich, it's creamy, and of course it's made with mustard oil and mustard seed. It is half fine, which means we still have some chunky bits of mustard. It has a little bit of that sharpness, and it works wonders as a binder. Of course I'm gonna put mustard on both sides of my bust and butt. There we go. Rubbed in real good. Now it's time to put on that PitmasterX Classic Barbecue Rub. And of course we're seasoning both sides again. And my last bust and butt is special because I'm not gonna cover it with anything to make the rub stick. I'm gonna start on the fat cap side, sprinkle on PitmasterX's Classic Barbecue Rub. I'm going to try and get on as much as possible. Make sure that it sticks. I'm gonna wait until the rub sticks. I'm not gonna make it stick by adding something. I'm just gonna wait for the juices to come out that beautiful bust and butt and say, hello, is that flavor? And how do I get as much of it to stick on me? After around 10 minutes of waiting, the rub sticks to the bust and butt, and I can flip it around, seasoning the other side in the same way. I'm gonna be cooking on the Burnhard pellet smoker. This thing is an absolute dream to work with for long cooks. And with bust and butts, you gotta expect some crazy long time to cook it all the way up to pulled. That's 5 to 6 kilograms of pure meat with a big bone in it, and that takes a lot of energy to cook. So I'm gonna turn it on and set it to smoke at a temperature of 120 degrees Celsius. I'm gonna check the pellets, of course, and make sure that I have plenty of this. And I know this is not gonna be enough, so I'm gonna load it up with some hardwood pellets. I'm gonna fill it all the way up. The Burnhard is slowly getting up to temperature. I'm gonna start by putting on my mayonnaise bust and butt. I'm gonna put it in with the fat cap pointing down. Then the mustard goes in. They might have been a little bit bigger than I expected. And don't forget that Burnhard smoker has an incredibly large cooking surface, so this kind of caught me by surprise. I expected this to fully fit. Now I gotta work with it and figure out a way to make it fit, because we got to make it happen. A little bit of puzzling right there, right here, and the one without the adhesive sitting in the back. This kind of feels like one of those holiday backseat things with 3 children in a car that only takes 2. But it's gonna work, I promise you, because in that first phase, That meat's gonna warm up, it's gonna shrink, tighten up, so it's gonna become like more voluminous. Voluminous is it's gonna be bigger. It's gonna shrink in size, so that's when I can just reposition it to make sure that everything of that bust and butt gets plenty of smoke and plenty of air flowing around it. After 10 hours of smoking, I built up a beautiful bark on these pulled porks, and it was time to wrap them up. So I put each of them in their own aluminum tray and sealed it off with aluminum foil. Making sure that they were airtight, I put them back on the barbecue and let them continue to cook at a temperature of 120 degrees Celsius until they reached a core temperature of 96 degrees Celsius. And that's where we're at right now. They're done, and we got these beautiful trays right here. And all we need to do now is just give them a little time to relax, about an hour or so, and let them cool down a little bit. And after cooking for such a long time, it's always a moment of excitement to open up your trays with cooked bust and butts. Let's start with our mayonnaise bust and butt. Open it up and take a look inside. Ooh, wow. Oh, look at that beautiful bark. Nice and dark, and absolutely gorgeous bust and butt. Time to unveil the bust and butt with the mustard bark. Wow, beautiful bark as well. Nice and dark. Look at how juicy that bark is. And then finally, the natural non-adhesive bust and butt bark. You can clearly see that there's a difference between using an adhesive and not using an adhesive. Still a great bark, but nowhere near the same color of the bark on the bust and butts that we used an adhesive on. Quick in-between verdict, I like the bust and butt bark at best with the mayonnaise bark on the outside. It's nice and dark, it looks absolutely fantastic. Whereas the natural one is just a little bit, well, pale is maybe the right word for it. Because the darker the bark is, the more smoke flavor it picked up. And that's just a good sign to me. However, I still need to take a look on the inside, so let's shred these up. I'm gonna taste each bark, and then I'm gonna mix that bark with meat, taste it again, making sure that I understand the flavor profile that I created. This was a very interesting side-by-side comparison. Seeing how little difference there is in flavor profile, it just blows my mind. If I would have done this test with blindfolded, I think it would be very hard to distinguish what tastes like what. The only thing that I'm getting away that just jumps at me and that I'm thinking is different is that using mayonnaise and using mustard makes that crust a little creamier. But since the pork meat is very juicy from all the fat that melted down, the crust doesn't really need to be extra juicy. So what this comes down to is that if you have a bust and butt that is of low quality meat, and I'm talking low quality when it has less fat in it, then I would recommend using mustard or using mayonnaise to enrichen that crust. However, if you have a good quality, a beautiful, I'm not saying expensive, a good quality piece of pork with a lot of fat, then I would recommend going au naturel. That's just me. One more. Oh.